Today we will discuss about state. So, before discussing about state, we'll briefly discuss how the modern concept of state originated. The modern concept of state was developed during 16th and 17th century in Europe by the Italian diplomat and political philosopher Niccolò Machiavelli in his work Prince in the form of stati in Italian. So the very idea and concept of state as originated by Machiavelli gradually developed and growth due to Renaissance and reform in Europe. So the present modern state owed its origin to Machiavelli. But one question arises here whether the very idea of state was there in ancient time. Yes, during ancient time among the Greeks it was known as polis, and among the Romans it was in the form of civitas. Even in ancient India, Kautilya or Chanakya in his Arthashastra clearly mentioned about statecraft. So, before broadly discussing about the key features of state, we must discuss about the definitions given by different political philosophers, political scientists, and some of the jurists. So, before discussing about the definitions, first we go to the definition given by Machiavelli. So, how Machiavelli defined state? According to him, state is an association acting through law promulgated by government with coercive power within a community territorially demarcated to maintain social order. So, from the definition of Machiavelli, we found the key elements of state. One is government, then the coercive power is otherwise could be called as sovereignty, and a demarcated territory. That means regarding the element of territory, and when it is he referring about a community, it means population. The next definition is about Woodrow Wilson, how he defined. Woodrow Wilson defined state as an organized institution for law within a definite territory. So, his importance is regarding territory and law. Then the next definition is given by Grotius. Grotius defined it as a complete union of free men for the purpose of enjoying of law and for the sake of public welfare. So here Wilson only touched about population and about law, that means the sovereign power. Holland, the jurist who defined state as a numerous assemblies of human beings occupying a certain territory among whom will of the majority prevail. Here Holland refers to one element of population and the second element of territory only. And if we will analyze the definition of Salman, another jurist, he defines state as an association of human beings for attainment of certain ends by certain means. So here also Salman gave his importance on population only, while we will discuss an unanimous definition which almost accepted by most of the political scientists and jurists, that was given by Professor Garner. And according to him, state is a community of persons. So here he clearly refers to population, and here he refers that it may be more or less numerous, and one thing permanently occupying a definite portion of territory. That here he tossed the second element of state, and that is territory. And regarding the third element, he defined it as an independent of external control on an organized government to which the great body of inhabitants tenders habitual obedience. Here he referred to two elements. One is organized government, that means government, and the next element, that is regarding sovereignty. And here he discussed both external and internal sovereignty of state, and how the Indian philosophers or jurists, they defined it. In ancient India, the jurists defined it as a political unit consisting two parts of sovereign and subjects, the latter rendering habitual obedience to the former. So, the Indian jurist, they refers to the sovereign power of state. So, our next important elements to be discussed are: one is population, then territory, then government, then sovereignty, and the fifth one, international recognition. So, out of these five, the first four elements, such as population, territory, government, and sovereignty, are the traditional elements of state, and the very modern element associated with state's element is international recognition, and nowadays it bears the most important element of state. So, among the traditional definitions of state, first we have to discuss about population. So, regarding population, it is a kind of human institution. So, here state is identified as a human institution. So, in ancient Greek, Plato exactly fixed 5040 as the required population to form a state. And Aristotle mentioned in his Politis that the population should be large enough to be self-sufficient and small enough to be well governed. And Rousseau exactly fixed the population of a state at 10,000. So, these are the fixation of number of population to constitute a state. But there are two kinds of state. In ancient time, they were identified as city-state. But after the medieval period, there was the growth of country-state. As already we have discussed, the modern notion and concept of state developed during 16th, 17th century, and it was expanded due to Renaissance and Reformation in Europe. So, at the present time, modern nation state is widely identified as country state. And as there are certain numerous categories of country state we found at the present world, some are homogeneous and some are heterogeneous. Homogeneous exactly means having a common language, common religion, and a common culture, common script, art, etc. But in a heterogeneous country state, we found different communities of languages, religions, culture, etc. So, in certain heterogeneous state, we also found certain kind of different nationalities. As in that context, we can refer the example of Switzerland, Canada, etc. But when the question is regarding homogeneous, the best example it could be United States of America, England, France, etc. But in case of India, India could be better identified as a heterogeneous character of state. But one thing, here there is a common nationality, and that is the Indian nationality. Our second element is regarding territory. So, to become a state, there is the basic requirement of a fixed territory, and there is a demarcation of boundaries, and there have territorial waters, high seas, and exclusive airspace. And when we are discussing about territory, we found the country states are constituting compact areas. So also some country state or modern states, they have scattered territories. So when we discuss about compact territories, in that context we could discuss certain modern states like Nepal, or we can identify certain other countries in Europe like Germany or Italy, those who have compact areas at present. But when it is regarding a state constituting scattered territories, then the best example could be India, as because leaving the mainland, India also is having territories such as Andaman Nicobar Island, Then the Lakshadweep island. So these are considered as scattered territories. So there must be a requirement when there is the question of territory and population. There must be minimum balance between the both, which was better defined by Aristotle in his element of population, as Aristotle told that it should be large enough to be self-sufficient and small enough to be well governed. In that context, he was completely right. And our next element is government. Government of a state is a machinery or an organ, and that organ which will of the state is expressed and enforced by that organ, and that organ, that is government, formulate public policies, builds and the systems of rules, regulations, and also providing legal framework to the community. So, in a simple sense, a government is a machinery and it is an organ which expresses and enforces and formulates the will of the state, and that is the rules, regulations, public policies, laws, etc. So, our next element is sovereignty. Sovereignty simply means a supreme power, and that supreme power of the state, and that supreme power is two types. One is internal and another one is external. Whenever there is a supreme power to control over all individual subjects, citizens, and all associations, organizations within a state, that is called the internal part of the sovereignty. Whenever that state maintains defense and protection from external aggression and external policies like the international policies, when it is free from any outside compulsion or force, then it is called external sovereignty. But certain jurists, they limits the power of sovereignty. According to them, there are certain systems in society such as custom, religion, social and political groups, they limits the power of sovereignty, which we'll discuss when we'll discuss the very concept of sovereignty in our upcoming video. Our fifth element of state is international recognition. International recognition is simply means membership of United Nations organization or the organizations of international nature which are parts of United Nations organization such as International Court of Justice, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, UNICEF, UNESCO, etc. So these are the requirements of international recognitions, but that international recognition sometimes some state, even in spite of not having international recognition, they are continued to still and function as full-fledged state in international politics, such as we can refer to People's Republic of China, which was formed in 1949, but it was not internationally recognized by United States of America and certain other Western countries of Europe. In spite of that, China was having relationship with many other countries. It was having trade, commerce, international relation, scientific cooperation, etc. In spite of not being recognized by America and the Western European countries. And China was only internationally recognized in 1978. So, international recognition, whether it is having importance as the fifth element of state, yes, because to be a full-fledged state at the present world order, a state must be recognized by number of states and it must be a member of United Nations organization, as presently there are almost 200 countries or members of United Nations organization. So at present time, international recognition is a must to become a full-fledged state.